This episode is brought to you by AWS Startups. AWS Startups supports entrepreneurs in Latin America across multiple programs, including cloud credits to help startups test features and extend runway, technical support to help optimize AWS solutions, and integrations with your product. They can also help startups build relationships with investment funds, accelerators, and companies to help your startup grow. We've invested in startups that AWS Startups team has referred to us. For more information and case studies from startups like Kavak, Wala, Nubank, Rappi, and more, check out aws.amazon.com/es/campaigns/founders, which we'll put in the show notes so you can find it easily, where you can access up to $1,350 in AWS credits for your startup.
Hello, and welcome from Guadalajara, Mexico to this episode of Crossing Borders with Nathan Lustig, where Nathan has conversations with entrepreneurs doing business across borders and the people who support them, with a focus on those that have some connection to Latin America. My name is Araceli Dominguez, PR Manager for Latam List, a proud sponsor of the Crossing Borders podcast. Sign up for our weekly updates on latamlist.com to get a summary of the week's biggest headlines in Latin American tech news. Nathan's guest today is Juanma Gironella, CEO and co-founder at Guros, a digital vehicle insurance marketplace that allows customers to compare different insurance providers and choose the one that fits their needs. Guros is also a Magma Partners portfolio company as they invest in them in Fund 3. In this episode, Nathan and Juanma talk about Guros' mission, democratize access to insurance. They also discuss the insurance opportunities in Mexico and Latin America, as well as Juanma's journey raising money during the pandemic. We hope you enjoyed this conversation with Juanma Gironella.
Okay, Juanma, welcome to the podcast. Thanks for being willing to do it.
Thanks for having me, Nate.
Where are you in the world today?
I am right now in Mexico City. I am originally from Spain, but I live and breathe in Mexico City.
And how long have you been in Mexico?
I've been here for in my entire life for about 18 years, which was separated in like two phases. First, when I was a kid, from 5 to 14 years old. And then this kind of second round or second phase has been the last 9 years. Wow. If you say it out loud, it sounds like a lot of time.
It is a long time. It's like when I talk about being in Latin America, I've been here almost 11 years now. It just seems crazy.
Yeah, time flies.
It does. So tell me what you're building with Guros.
Well, Guros is, if you want to do like a parallel concert or an easy to understand short description, is as if played and select quote from the US had a Mexican son, that would be Guros. So what we're doing is we're democratizing access to insurance, both for end customers who generally hate how insurance works, and we feel that it shouldn't be that way. And we are also facilitating this growing set of fintech companies or even incumbent companies who want and can offer insurance, but want to do so in a much simpler way rather than going through the usual headaches of integrating and dealing with technology in the industry.
So give me the before and after for one, like your retail users. If I want to go get some car insurance via you, what's it like without you and what's it like with you? And then the same question for, say, like a fintech partner or a legacy partner.
Yeah, so I'm pretty sure if you ask, or anyone you ask, if you question like, how do you feel about insurance? Most people just don't want to do it, but they know they have to. It's one of the industries with the lowest NPS out there. So our thesis kind of started out by saying, okay, so if everyone hates being sold over the phone, why on earth is everything still done over the phone in insurance, right? There's a massive difference between what we can do in essentially every aspect of our lives and what you can do in insurance, right? The traditional insurance experience is you either go through a traditional agent or broker, which is going to involve multiple phone calls, emails, probably a couple of in-person visits, which sounds kind of crazy nowadays, but it's still the way it's done. Or you're going to go to a website, give 20 different data points about yourself, and the second you get to see prices, if you get to see prices, they're going to start calling you like crazy. And then right after you purchase, they forget about you, and we'll see you on your next payment or your renewal, right? So there's zero value added after purchase. And the way we feel about this is that, I mean, we get that insurance is a product that you purchase hoping not to use, but what that has caused is the industry to just forget about providing value to customers after they purchase. So that's what we are creating. So for customers, we created a marketplace where the experience of quoting, comparing, and purchasing auto insurance is as easy as booking a flight or a hotel online. You put 3 different data points. You get to see prices from 8 different carriers. If you like what you see, you can have your policy in 1 minute. It's a fully binding process on our website. So no phone calls, no nothing. And then rather than just sending you the PDF and forgetting about you, what we did is we created what we call our wallet, where you can upload every policy that you have, even if you didn't purchase it with us, even if it's from a company we don't work with. And so the idea is for you to have like that go-to place for all things insurance, because it usually happens that you have your home insurance with whoever you have your mortgage with, then health insurance with your employer, then you have life insurance maybe with your credit card. And in the end, you have no freaking clue when each of those policies expires. How can you get value from them? So we created that kind of go-to place for all things insurance for every customer. And if you did purchase your policy with us, you're going to be able to make any changes to your policy without talking to anyone. Because what we usually see is that once you become a customer, it is you who has to call 25 times to get any change made. And especially if you want to cancel your policy or you want to renew your policy, it takes a bunch of phone calls from your end now to make any changes. So we're trying for the experience to work the way we don't want it to. And on top of that, we are adding every single feature that we can find about your vehicles, because we started focusing on auto insurance. So the idea is we let our customers know if they have speeding tickets, if they have parking tickets, if they need to get their car inspected. So the idea is, rather than doing like the 2-window time frame, and if you purchase, that's great, and if not, I forget about you, it's more of a kind of starting a conversation with our users and adding value to them and earning their trust for whenever they're ready to become our customers, and when they become our customers, to continue to provide value to them on a regular basis, rather than just whenever they have to make a payment. Ironically, we obviously launched with our marketplace focusing direct to or in a direct to consumer model, and we started seeing a significant kind of inbound request from insurance agents and insurance brokers, because by trying to solve the problem that we identified for customers, we ended up solving a problem that a lot of brokers have, which is they usually focus on kind of big corporate accounts or government accounts or product, or they sell insurance tied to a financial product. And obviously it's a big business and they can achieve big volume fast, but the penetration they can get to is kind of capped by those products they are being tied to. So the way they usually do it is they set up a massive call center operation. They make a gazillion phone calls a day, very low efficiency, very low retention rates. And they saw on us, or they saw our platform as a way to provide value and increasing that penetration without having to incur into this kind of big setup costs. So we started exploring that kind of new business that we hadn't initially considered. And we were lucky enough to partner with some companies that, so we, rather than going to brokers because they intended to keep all of the revenue and do kind of none of the job essentially, or none of the work, we ended up doing that on our own and directly with potential partners. And the first partner we closed was Kavak, the used cars marketplace. They used to have 3 implants from insurance companies. It was taking them about 30 minutes to get a quote and about 2 hours to get a policy. So obviously there was a process that was not scaling as fast as they wanted. We showed them how our platform worked. They, after 72 hours, the implants were gone, and it was taking them about 10 seconds to get a quote and about a minute to get the policy. And rather than just staying there, we started kind of thinking, okay, so how can we make this easier? Because in the end, insurance, with most of our partners, it's not their core activity. So the way we're approaching this is, how can we leverage whatever is your core activity and whatever information you get from the customers there to integrate or embed the insurance experience within whatever you're doing. So we kind of ended up doing this sort of inside out of our platform, so that every feature that we have on our wallet and our marketplace can be embedded into any of our partners' experiences. So the idea, for example, with Kavak is, if as you move through the process of purchasing a car, we are going to leverage the information that Kavak already has to make a no-click quote process. So customers don't have to do anything. Their team doesn't have to do anything. The kind of variables that we are quoting are the ones that Kavak thinks are best for the customers with the best possible prices. So that the customer is properly insured. And then whenever you decide to buy the car or you get your leasing or your credit approved, it's just going to be a yes or no process rather than having. So if you kind of compare the experience that most people go to is multiple phone calls, no clue what you need to do. You have to do everything like on a separate process versus what we're doing with partners like Kavak, where it's a one click to the entire process, seamless experience, no effort. And that integration process for our partners looks like a 2 to 3 weeks integration rather than what they would have to do if they were doing that on their own. So in Mexico, at least, you're going to be looking at 1 to 2 years to get regulatory approval. Then it's going to take you 6 months to a year with each insurance company you want to work with. And then you're going to be looking into 6 to 12 months integration. So if you're a startup or a company that wants to offer insurance, it can take you up to 4 years to get started, which is obviously insane, but it's just the way that it works. Because, I think everyone knows how bad the experience is for customers in the insurance industry. But for us who work in the industry, it's even worse because technology is not one of the things that the industry is known for. And you usually see very slow response times, a lot of uncontrolled errors, poorly documented APIs. So there's a lot of hurdles that companies who want to offer insurance have to go through before being able to do that. So that's why I said we're like Plaid and Select Quote together. So the idea again is to democratize access to insurance, both for end customers and for companies who want to offer that in a much simpler way.
So did you always know that you wanted to be an entrepreneur and in insurance, or is it something that came up in your career?
Great question. I think that, insurance has always kind of been part of my life because my father is an executive with over 40 years of experience in the industry. That's actually the reason we moved from Spain, where I'm originally from, to the Canary Islands for 5 years, then to Mexico for 9 years. Then we came back to Spain because he was moving with an insurance company. So it kind of always was around when I was growing up, but I never thought I was going to end up working in insurance. It's definitely, or probably, one of the least sexy industries you want to work with. So you never grow up saying, oh my God, this is the industry of my life. I want to work in insurance. But for me, it was kind of I kind of re-encountered insurance because I initially started working in financial services consulting. The firm I started to work for, after about 2 months of joining, they said, hey, we have a project in Mexico. Are you open to going there? And for me, it was that they were essentially sending me back home. So I said yes immediately. And that project lasted about a year. And I was lucky enough to get like a kind of firsthand experience into the financial services industry in general and insurance in particular. And I saw how things work. And I kind of felt like there had to be a better solution. Like it couldn't be as bad as the experience I was having. I guess luckily and unluckily for customers, it is as bad. And especially in Mexico, it's a massive market that has great acceptance for better solutions. It was in like the huge success that companies like Rappi or Uber have had here in Mexico. And they're like, it's the more I searched and looked into what solutions are there in insurance, I couldn't see anything that was kind of worth, or at least the way we saw it, we didn't see anything that said, okay, so these guys are solving the problem with insurance, the one I described before. So I was, I guess, crazy enough to talk to my family and say, hey guys, I'm going to dump this career and I'm going to go all in on this. The time is now, and the sooner the better. And that's kind of how we got started.
And walk us through kind of going from the idea stage to getting to the kind of first real traction. What did that look like?
Well, it was, I guess this is the experience that most entrepreneurs have, which is we're just essentially kind of jumping from one side to the other and trying to find like the solution that ended up resonating with our customers. We actually got started by doing what most of the industry does, which is essentially generating leads online and selling them or closing them over the phone, which is still considered to be kind of the new channels in insurance. Internet's not there yet, or wasn't there yet. And we very quickly realized how bad the unit economics were. So I don't know if you know this, but the insurance related terms in Google Ads are usually the most expensive or the second most expensive keywords there are everywhere in the world. And Mexico is no exception. So we were trying to grow basing our model in that, and it just didn't make sense from a unit economics perspective. So we started optimizing and trying to optimize for the average number of customers that our sales rep could manage. And from there, we ended up getting to the conclusion, like, what's the highest ratio of customers per sales rep we're going to be able to get to? And we ended up realizing that that number could be essentially infinite if we managed to remove the sales rep from the equation. And what that meant is we need to get much better at the experience that we provided and how customers understand insurance, because no one wants to know about insurance, but everyone wants to know that they are correctly insured. But I don't know about you, but most people don't have the time, or they don't want to put the time into understanding everything. And ironically, the industry, what they do is they explain everything in complicated terms. They provide no information about how to make a better purchasing decision. They add no value after purchase. So we ended up with this kind of very interesting problem to be solved. And it was funny because when we got started, the response, or when we kind of started going towards that path, the response we got from the industry was, you guys are crazy. Customers in Mexico are not ready to purchase insurance online. And we went through that kind of, so we researched everything. We saw how the traditional experience was and everything. And the conclusion we got to is it's actually the other way around, is the industry who is not ready for customers to purchase online, because a lot, like every single micro interaction had to be simplified in a way that anyone could make a purchasing decision without talking to anyone. And that's one of the main differences that we feel that we have versus the rest of the market. And when we launched, we very quickly realized that we were not as crazy as we thought, because we started seeing some initial tractions. Obviously, I mean, as an entrepreneur, you're kind of as scrappy as you can be. You try to test everything as fast as possible. So to kind of give you a direct response, I guess the way you get to that solution is just making every possible mistake as fast as possible until you get to a solution that the numbers say that you're on kind of the right path.
So you mentioned, people think maybe, or people were telling you Mexicans weren't ready to purchase online, but it was actually the companies that weren't ready to accept the purchases. Talk a little bit about the insurance opportunity in both Mexico and Latin America. I think for people in the US who might be listening, in terms of the market, penetration rates, all that sort of stuff that is massively different compared to the US.
Yeah, it is. For starters, in Mexico, there are about 42 million vehicles, and only 30% of those have auto insurance. Even though it is mandatory by law to have auto insurance, it's not yet enforced as it should be. Like, the regulators are getting there, but it's moving at a slow kind of pace. And even though only 30% of vehicles have coverage in Mexico, that amounts to about $6 billion a year. That's for auto insurance. If you move south, and so from Mexico down south to Latin America, the industry is a $240 billion a year industry, and no player has over 5% market share. And the way we interpret this is that it is such a highly fragmented market because the experience sucks essentially wherever you go, and no matter the company, because everyone's doing the same. It's a kind of marketing-based model where everyone's just stealing the same customers year after year. So if someone saves me $5, I'll just switch because I see no effort in switching. So the way we interpret that, again, is that the value proposition is essentially is pretty much the same in the entire region, and the opportunity is massive, and there is no clear kind of go-to place for all things insurance. So that's what we're trying to become. We started with auto insurance. We just launched health insurance. We currently have about 30,000 paying customers, and we're growing faster every month that goes by. And the idea is to kind of leverage that fully digital experience that we have in auto insurance and replicate that for other verticals, with a very interesting challenge that getting to a fully binding digital experience in auto insurance is pretty hard in Mexico, which is one of the countries that are more advanced in terms of technology. And I say this with two massive quotes because it's quite the opposite. But the funny thing is that for other verticals, there are no APIs. So that's how late the industry is. And what we're doing now is we are building those APIs that the market has developed so we can move faster than the rest of the market, because we feel that the opportunity is just huge. And again, the way we feel about this is that in order to fix the experience problem that we see in the industry, we need to solve the technological problem that the industry has. And that's kind of how we're walking past that.
I think in terms of market, part of like our thesis around investing in InsurTech is, number one, there's a big chunk of those 70% of people that aren't buying car insurance today just because it's so hard to do. And that if you offer something that's a good value and makes sense, there's some big chunk of people that probably will buy. Plus, having a better distribution and better customer experience, you can get a nice chunk of 30% that are doing it. But then when you think about other industries, and I don't remember the numbers exactly, so we'll have to link it in the show notes, but Mexico percentage of GDP investing in insurance, I think, is 1 point something or maybe 2 point something. Chile's, I think, is the highest in all of Latin America, and I think it's like 4-ish, something like that, maybe 5. And then the US is, I think, somewhere between 10 and 12. The US is a weird market, so no one is ever going to get to that. But if Mexico gets to Chile levels, if Colombia gets to Chile levels, Brazil, which in our view is likely to happen, at least directionally happen, as the countries get better insurance products that fit more people, makes it easier, the countries develop, that you're just going to have this boom that is probably going to be hard for the traditional carriers to take advantage of. And that's why investing in tech companies, InsurTech is so interesting for us.
Yeah, and that makes perfect sense, actually. And ironically, about 35% of our customers are people who had never bought auto insurance before knowing us. And when we usually ask them, like, why didn't you do this? And it's because most of them were like, they had like this preconception that insurance was 4 to 5 times more expensive than it actually is. They also have this kind of conception that it doesn't work or that you don't get paid. And that comes from just not knowing what the product does and not knowing what they're purchasing. And that's like from our very small point of view right now. But the idea is, how can we replicate that for all other verticals? Because like you said, and I believe every single country but Chile is below the average of the OECD countries in terms of GDP per capita and insurance premiums. So we share that view, obviously, that the opportunity is huge and it's only going to get bigger. But the irony is that the more we research and the more we look into what is being done in the industry, especially by carriers, is they're just doing the same thing over and over again. And they try to launch new products that do essentially the same. So I don't know, we hope to be one of those catalyzers that helps speed up that change and to kind of help people lose that fear of getting or getting close to insurance and receiving a gazillion phone calls whenever they register into a website.
So let's jump over into the fundraise process. You guys were raising money right as the craziness of COVID first kicked off. And you guys had actually ended up being the biggest check that we ever wrote at the time without ever meeting in person. So you had that crown for a while, all the way through into COVID. But talk us through a little bit the fundraising experience for that first round into the teeth of COVID, and then what you've been doing since then.
Sure. Well, I guess we had never raised money before, so we don't know how it used to be. I'm guessing the process was sort of similar as to what it usually is, or when you guys used to invest in person. But what we saw was we kind of learned a lot of what we had to pay attention to while we were fundraising. And what I mean by this is that usually VC asks a lot of questions that you're not ready to answer, so you have to go back, figure it out, and then come back. Overall, I think that it was kind of crazy because not only we were doing this remote, but COVID was there. So I think we started raising at a time that everyone was kind of scared of saying, hey, so what's going to happen? How is the industry going to behave? Is this going to be good or bad? For how long are we going to be kind of locked up? So I guess the best definition of this is it was crazy, and in the best possible kind of way to put it. So we learned a lot. It was pretty fast. Faster than we anticipated. So I guess that's a great sign. And this happened in April last year. We raised our Series Seed. It was a team of 6 people working in person. And then all of a sudden we started growing the team and getting more people on board. And to this day, we haven't met in person with about 95% of the team. So it's crazy. But I guess that for us, it was easier, I guess, to get used to that because we didn't know how it used to be before that. But we are seeing now, whenever we talk to VCs and we talk to friends, some of them, or a lot of them, are coming to Mexico City now that things are a bit more calm and everyone has been vaccinated and everything. And it's funny because many times they tell us, hey, we should meet in person. And we're like, well, we're happy to meet in person in 3 weeks, but we can also do it remote. Like, we're fine with doing that. So I don't know, I guess some of the old habits are kicking in right now that people are more calm. In the end, I guess what we have learned is to try and partner with the right people. Doesn't matter if they'd like to do it remote or in person. And what I mean by this is finding partners who can help us get to where we want to get, and that can add a ton of value. So I don't know, I guess that was kind of our experience.
Do you have any books, blogs, podcasts, or documentaries you like to recommend to people, whether about startups or just life in general?
Yeah, I read a lot because in the end, most of what we are doing, we're not 100% sure of what we're doing. So it involves a lot of reading. The ones that I feel have impacted us the most are probably, have you heard of Reforge? Reforge is a kind of growth academy funded by Andrew Chen and Brian Balfour, and a lot of the guys that have done amazing job growing products with product-led growth, which is what we're doing. So that's one that we love to research and to read about. Another one that we read a lot is First Round Review, and I believe that's from a venture capital firm. They have great content of everything in general, not just growth. And another blog that has helped us a lot is Conversion Excel, which was started by Pete Bladja. And there's a lot of great content on those and on how to grow, how to measure everything, how to get better at doing A/B testing, and essentially doing, like I said before, every mistake you can as fast as possible so the numbers tell you what's working best.
If you could go back to when you first started the business, knowing everything you know today, what advice would you give yourself?
A lot. I think I would write a couple of blog posts to myself. The first one the first thing that I would tell myself is a sentence from Thomas Alva Edison, which says that our greatest weakness lies in giving up. And the most certain way to success is to always try just one more time. And it's tough as an entrepreneur because you hear a lot of no's, you make a lot of mistakes, and you feel kind of bummed out and say, oh my God, so this problem again, or this problem now and everything. But I believe that if you continue to stand up and keep fighting, good things start showing up eventually. The second thing would be to surround myself by people who are way smarter than I am. I don't know where I read this sentence, but if you're the smartest person in the room, you're in the wrong room. And that couldn't have proven more truthful with us. We have a great team of people who know so much better than us. And when you started, you have to do everything, right? So you have a little bit of knowledge about a lot of things, but then that doesn't scale, obviously. And when you bring in the right people and they start putting to work all that expertise and all that kind of insights that they have, things start happening at a much faster pace than you ever thought it was kind of possible to get there. I would also say not to be afraid to dream big and then kind of work backwards to get there. There's another sentence which I love by, I think it was Norman Vincent Peale, that says, what the mind can conceive and believe and the heart desire, you can achieve, which kind of ties back with the previous sentence. So if you dream big, and obviously you need to have like common sense and validate things, and there's a lot of work involved, but the more I get to know entrepreneurs, and you obviously get started with like a narrow vision of a very specific problem, but it's always good to have like the big problem kind of present and not lose sight of that you're trying to solve, and try to kind of the baby steps that you take as you move forward that take you to that place that you want to go. And then the last three things that I would tell myself is get way better at communicating, especially internally. As entrepreneurs, you kind of feel that the team knows everything that's going on, especially if it's a small team, but there's a lot of times that people just don't know it. And so I would tell myself to communicate. It's better to over communicate than to under communicate. It saves a ton of effort and a ton of kind of correcting the curves and everything. Two more additional things. Having good data is freaking hard, but it's worth the investment and the effort. It's very easy to say that you're data driven, but it is very hard to get to be data driven. And that means putting a lot of effort into having the right data and putting kind of like the mechanism so the team works with data first, not just kind of say, yeah, we need data as a comment on every weekly or daily or whatever, but actually putting in the work of thinking how the team works around data is one of the kind of epiphanies that we've had. And the last thing that I would tell myself is, if I had to summarize what strategy means to us, is being intentional as to what your value proposition is and how you plan to use that to grow, which is something we've had to kind of figure out as we were sort of moving forward. But it has saved a ton of time, and we have been able to move up like a lot faster now that everyone knows what we are trying to do and how our value proposition is our kind of levers to grow. So I guess that would be kind of like a short note to myself.
It's great advice to yourself, but I think also great advice to entrepreneurs that maybe are a step or two behind you on the same path, where they can shortcut some of those lessons learned. Thanks a lot for sharing your story and sharing your wisdom you've learned from your path here. I really appreciate it, and it's going to be fun to continue to support you as you continue to build the business.
Awesome. Thanks, Nate, and thank you for having me. Talk soon.
Thanks again for listening to this episode of Crossing Borders with our guest Juanma Gironella. And thank you to Angel Andraca for producing this podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, please share with a friend and give us a rating on iTunes or wherever you listen to podcasts. It's the best way to share what's going on in Latin America's ecosystem.